Welcome to the deep dive, where we sift through your sources, articles, research, maybe even your own notes, and pull out the key insights. It's like your fast track to being genuinely clued in.
Exactly.
And today, you've brought along a really interesting mix of trending posts from the X platform. We've got everything from some pretty wild tech breakthroughs to cultural moments and the latest political buzz.
That's right. And our mission here is to sort of guide you through all this, help you see not just what's trending, but really why it matters.
Connecting the dots, basically.
Yeah, connecting the dots, finding that hidden context behind the headlines. We'll probably uncover some surprising stuff along the way.
Okay, sounds good. Let's kick things off then, maybe plunge headfirst into the tech world, specifically how AI is making these, well, truly remarkable strides.
Good place to start.
We're looking at a post here from @NTFabiano. It's gotten a lot of attention, highlighting a study that compares AI directly to human doctors, diagnosing over 300 really complex cases. That sounds bold.
It is bold, and the findings are quite startling. What's really insightful here is the massive leap in AI's diagnostic accuracy.
Okay.
The study used something called the sequential diagnosis benchmark. It's basically this rigorous simulation, right? Where the AI, specifically OpenAI's O3 model, they call it MAI DXO, could iteratively ask for tests, weigh the costs, refine its diagnosis.
Just like a human doctor would, yeah.
Exactly. And the results. Get this. The AI hit an 85.5% accuracy rate.
85.5.
Wow. Now, put that against the human doctors in the same complex cases, they only reached 20% accuracy.
At a percent, that's
Okay.
a huge gap.
Yeah.
So AI wasn't just more accurate, it was cheaper too. Cut costs by 20%.
That's right, 20% cost reduction.
So what are the sort of deeper implications here beyond just the numbers? How does this really challenge how we think about medicine?
Well, it's not just about being more efficient. It profoundly challenges our traditional reliance on human diagnosis, especially for these really tricky cases with lots of factors. It points towards a future where AI isn't just a helper tool, but maybe even the primary diagnostician, handling that initial complex data crunching. And that brings up huge questions for medicine, doesn't it? How do we train doctors to work with AI, not compete against it? What ethical rules do we need for AI making these critical decisions?
Yeah, the ethics are huge.
And could this actually lead to better access to top-notch diagnosis globally? Especially in places without many specialists. It's starting to redraw the map of healthcare, really.
Definitely a lot to think about there for the future of healthcare. Okay, shifting gears now. From medical AI, let's go, way out there. Space.
All right.
This next post is from @Netflix itself, announcing a pretty incredible partnership with NASA. It seems like an odd couple, maybe? What's the thinking behind this?
It is an interesting mix, yeah? But it taps into this bigger trend of making space more accessible. What's fascinating is Netflix using its massive global reach, 700 million subscribers?
Something like that, yeah. Huge.
To broadcast live space events. We're talking rocket launches, spacewalks, mission updates, even live feeds from the ISS.
Wow, live from the ISS on Netflix.
Yeah. And it's not totally new ground for NASA, right? If they've been moving towards commercial partners like SpaceX more and more. Remember the first crewed launch from the U.S. in 2020?
I do.
And historically, there's always been this push to bring space closer to people. Think back to the Challenger wanting to put a civilian, a teacher, in space.
Right. So it's about access, engagement. NASA's struggled a bit with public interest sometimes, hasn't it? Could this actually make a difference?
That's exactly the idea. And the potential impact, it could be significant. There was a study, I think 2015, showing a 15% drop in U.S. student interest in space sciences since 2015.
Oh, that's not good.
No. So this kind of broad, easy access through Netflix, it could be a powerful way to get people excited about STEM again, inspire a whole new generation.
Imagine millions watching a spacewalk live.
Exactly. From their couches. It could really change how we see space exploration. Less like this distant science thing, more like a shared human adventure.
Okay, from the grand scale of space, let's zoom back into the tech world itself, but focus on the people. There's clearly a fierce competition for talent brewing.
Oh, definitely. A talent war.
Yeah, this post from @TBPN makes a joke about it, showing a top OpenAI researcher, Jiahui Yu, being traded to Meta like a sports star.
Yeah.
Funny, but there's truth there, right?
Absolutely. And it really makes you ask, what do these high-profile moves tell us about the AI industry right now?
What do they tell us?
Well, Meta reportedly offered bonuses, get this, up to $100 million to lure top OpenAI people.
100 million. just as a bonus.
Apparently. It's not just about the money, though. It shows this almost sports-like dynamic. These top AI researchers are like superstar athletes.
Because they hold the keys to the next big thing.
Precisely. They're crucial for developing the next-gen AI models, the ones everyone thinks will dominate the future market.
So it's a sign of just how intense the competition is for these key minds. And speaking of vital tech components, Elon Musk was just praising Tesla's new battery factory. How does that fit in?
It connects pretty directly, actually. If the talent war is about the human brain power,
Right.
Tesla's new LFP battery factory in Sparks, Nevada, that's about the critical hardware, about strategic independence.
LFP? What's that stand for again?
Lithium iron phosphate. These cells are getting really popular. They're safer, cheaper, last longer than the traditional lithium-ion ones.
Okay.
And their market share is growing fast, like 52% of the EV battery market back in 2021. Tesla's really pushing them hard.
So this factory is a big deal for the U.S.
Huge deal. It enhances U.S. energy independence, means less reliance on foreign battery tech, especially from, dominant players like China's CATL. They're one of the world's biggest battery makers.
Right.
So you've got this fight for the best minds on one side, and this strategic push to control the key physical components on the other, both sides of the tech race.
Makes sense. Talent and tech infrastructure. Okay, let's pivot now. Away from the pure tech, let's feel the pulse of society a bit, explore some cultural moments, human stories catching fire online.
Sounds good.
First stop, this post from @HistoryandMemes. It takes us back to the 1972 Olympics. The legendary Olga Korbut and her band Deadloop. If you haven't seen the clip, it's something else.
It really is. But what's so captivating is just the sheer nerve, the artistry of what people started calling the Korbut flip.
Right.
It was the first time anyone has tried a backward release move on the uneven bars in international competition, ever.
Wow.
And the old video, you can see how hard it was. And the crowd reaction is wild, like gasps, but also whistling, even jeering. It was controversial.
Why was it banned then? Just too dangerous?
Yeah, ultimately banned over safety concerns. But her performance, it wasn't just one move. It was pivotal. It pushed gymnastics towards being much more athletic, more acrobatic.
Change of sport.
Totally. Huge influence. She got into the International Gymnastics Hall of Fame in '88. Really shows how one person can just redefine everything.
That's a great example. From pushing athletic limits to, well, an act of pure parental instinct. This post from @ColinRugg tells a really dramatic story about a rescue on a Disney cruise ship. Makes your heart pound just reading it.
It does. And this story, it raises big questions, doesn't it, about human instinct when things go wrong and how effective safety rules actually are.
What happened exactly?
So a father, apparently without a second thought, jumped overboard from the fourth deck to save his 5-year-old daughter who'd fallen in.
Oh my God, from the fourth deck.
Yeah. And what made it a successful rescue, they both were rescued, was the crew's incredibly fast action. They got a tender ship, like a smaller rescue boat, in the water within minutes.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
But you said these things are rare. Successful outcomes.
Unfortunately, yeah. Statistics show they are rare. There's a 2019 report, I think, that found only 9 out of 25 overboard incidents actually ended in a rescue.
Wow, only 9 out of 25. That really puts it in perspective. So it's amazing bravery, but also highlights how vital those quick responses are.
Absolutely. It underscores that when the emergency plans work perfectly, they can save lives.
Right.
And this incident, even though it's rare, it does reflect this wider industry push for better safety. Cruise lines are always updating surveillance, deployment systems, crew training, trying to improve the odds in these awful situations.
A constant effort, I guess. Okay, let's shift to something a bit more everyday. Workplace dynamics. This post from @MatsPosting is funny. It points out that just, keeping your mouth shut and doing your job can actually seem rude now.
Huh. Yeah, it resonates, doesn't it?
It does. What's behind that?
Well, it taps into some really interesting shifts in how we think about work culture, this idea of the rude coworker starter pack. It lines up with a 2023 study that found, surprisingly, 62% of employees feel pressured to socialize at work. Yeah, pressured, and they felt it could actually hurt their productivity. It also touches on, neurodiversity. Lots of neurodivergent folks prefer just focusing on the task, not constant social stuff.
That makes sense.
So there's this tension, right, between the old team building idea and this growing desire to just get the work done. And a 2024 Gallup poll showed 54% of U.S. workers now put pay ahead of having a workplace family.
That is a big shift away from the workplace family idea. And then also on cultural norms, we've got @EcoMarxy kind of poking fun at the idea that eating with your hands is somehow un-American. Simple point, but loaded, maybe.
It's funny, but yeah, it's a sharp critique of cultural inconsistency
Yeah.
and our biases, really.
How so?
Well, think about it. The U.S. doesn't really have an official national dish, but the burger.
Mm,
Pretty iconic, right?
definitely.
And how do most people eat a burger? With their hands. Yet there's still this judgment sometimes about eating other foods with your hands, even though it's totally normal in tons of cultures worldwide. India, Ethiopia, it's often about community, enjoying the food more directly.
Right, I've heard that.
Yeah, anthropologists even suggest eating with hands can boost the sensory experience, maybe even help digestion. So it makes you question why we're so attached to utensils sometimes. Challenges that Western bias.
It's funny how we don't question some norms. Okay, speaking of social signals, a Terrible 808 shared a video asking, what's this new trend called? It shows a woman just repeatedly flipping her hair. It seems simple, but what's the deal in the digital age?
Right, it's not just a simple gesture when it goes viral, is it?
Yep.
Hair flipping itself, historically, culturally, it's often seen as a nonverbal cue.
Like flirting?
Yeah, maybe flirting, showing confidence, or just trying to get attention. But what's key here is how social media amplifies it. Turns a personal action into viral content.
What performance?
Exactly. It reflects how digital interaction is changing things. Gestures that used to be just for the people right there, now they become performances for potentially huge online audiences. It's how we adapt our self-presentation, maybe consciously, maybe not.
Interesting how even small things get magnified online. Okay, let's make a bigger shift now into the political arena. Starting with @GuntherEagleman asking, what happened to the No Kings movement? That was pretty visible for a while.
Oh, Wes. And the context is really important here. The No Kings movement, it got pretty big, especially places like L.A., remember those protests?
Yeah.
Over 200,000 people back in June 2025.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. What was the core
It
frustration?
was basically frustration with what they saw as judicial overreach. Specifically, district courts issuing these nationwide injunctions that stopped Trump administration policies cold.
Right.
The whole point was challenging the power of single unelected judges to halt federal policy for the whole country.
Okay, so if it was that big, why does the post suggest it's faded? Did something specific happen?
Something very specific happened. A Supreme Court ruling, just recently, June 30th, 2025. It significantly limited the power of federal judges to issue those broad nationwide injunctions.
Ah, so the ruling addressed their main point.
Pretty much. It addressed one of their key grievances, which likely explains why the immediate goal felt met, and maybe the public energy behind it decreased.
Makes sense.
But this whole thing, it really taps into this fundamental, recurring American debate about how power is divided between the branches of government. It echoes way back even to things like the Dred Scott decision in 1857, which also raised huge questions about judicial power.
History repeating, or at least rhyming?
Exactly. It's a constant tension in the U.S. system.
Fascinating. Okay, moving to economic policy now. And legislative stuff. A post from @Kobisa highlights, well, a pretty wild scenario. A U.S. president calling for interest rates to be slashed down to 1%, while stocks are at all-time highs. That sounds wrong.
It sounds very counterintuitive, yes.
Yeah.
A president pushing for 1% rates when markets are booming, that's highly, highly unusual.
Why?
Because historically, you make drastic cuts like that during a recession to try and jumpstart growth. Doing it when the economy seems strong, like high stock prices suggest, that carries major risks.
And there's talk about the Fed chair, too.
Right. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent confirmed, talks about replacing the current Fed chair, Jerome Powell. But, and this is a key wrinkle, a Supreme Court ruling actually limits the president's power to just fire the Fed chair. So it's legally complicated.
Okay, so what are the big risks if they did somehow manage to cut rates that low?
Well, economists mostly agree the risks are substantial. You could trigger massive asset inflation, like maybe a 20–30% jump in stock and real estate prices in a year. An artificial bubble.
Doesn't sound stable.
Not really.
Yep.
And maybe more critically, it risks reigniting inflation, making everyday stuff more expensive again, hitting consumers hard. It's a really delicate balance, and that kind of move could seriously destabilize things.
A stark warning indeed. And staying with policy, Senator Chris Murphy, CT, apparently went through a 900-page Republican bill and found some interesting things. What's drawing attention there?
Yeah, 900 pages is a lot to digest. Senator Murphy highlighted several pretty controversial bits. For one, a proposed cut to Medicaid that could leave another 1 million Americans uninsured.
1 million more uninsured. Wow.
Yeah, potentially bumping the total from 16 to 17 million. The bill also raises flags about potential quid pro quo, basically, trading favors.
How so?
It includes new tax breaks for the coal industry. Critics are linking that directly to a reported $1 billion donation from the oil industry. And at the same time, it cuts incentives for renewable energy.
Okay, so a definite shift in energy policy focus there. What about AI? That's always a hot topic.
On AI, there's a really contentious part. It apparently includes a ban on states regulating AI for a whole decade.
A 10-year ban on state AI rules.
That's what's reported.
Yeah.
And that goes directly against what many experts advise. They argue that well-thought-out, maybe even local regulations, could actually help AI progress by building trust and setting clear rules, not slow it down.
So yeah, a bill with massive implications across healthcare, energy, AI, buried in 900 pages.
Exactly. A lot going on there.
Feels like that bill could be its own deep dive. Okay, let's shift focus slightly to some prominent public figures and how they're appearing in the public eye. First, at Real Estate Trent commented on Donald Trump's schedule. Still incredibly intense at 79. What can we read into that?
It's something people often bring up, his stamina.
Yeah.
And if you connect it to the research, his ability to keep that pace at 79, it actually aligns with studies showing that sustained activity, both physical and mental, can slow down cognitive decline.
Interesting. Even the golf.
Possibly. His golf gets criticized, but some research, like a 2019 study, suggested it might even help executive function. Complex decisions, spatial thinking. It makes you rethink what active aging looks like under intense public scrutiny.
A different perspective for sure. Okay, then there's this post from @BabyGravy9, kind of puzzling. It shows Jordan Peterson looking quite emotional on the news. Any idea what might be behind that?
Well, his visible distress could tie into a few recent things. There was that Haaretz article that just came out, revealing some pretty sensitive details about Israeli contractors and demolition work in Gaza. That could be heavy.
Yeah, that sounds intense.
And Peterson himself, he's been navigating some evolving public positions, like his recent very public discussions about Christianity versus Judaism, often debating figures like Ben Shapiro.
Right, I've seen clips of those.
They're deeply personal, often really charged topics. And someone in his position would naturally feel the weight of those debates and all the public reaction.
So maybe a mix of external news and his own deep intellectual, maybe spiritual explorations playing out publicly.
Seems plausible, yeah.
And finally, in the public figure realm, Atrapar mentions what he calls new frontiers of grifting, talking about Donald Trump's new fragrances. What's the story there?
Ah, yes, the fragrances. Victory 4547 launched June 30th, 2025. It's a pretty clear marketing move, leveraging his political brand.
Selling perfume based on presidency numbers.
Essentially, yeah. Critics call it grifting, but you could argue it's consistent with his past business ventures, right? Trump stakes, the NFTs.
True, it's not entirely out of character.
And maybe, in a broader sense, it could even be a way to hedge financially, given ongoing political fights and legal costs. It really shows how powerful personal branding remains, especially when you're navigating controversy.
Politics and commerce, definitely blurring lines there.
Yeah.
Okay, one last twist, kind of political cultural. @Cattered2 posted something funny, critiquing AI content with a meme about Floridians patrolling on alligators. It's absurd, but is there more to it?
Oh, absolutely. Humor often has layers, right?
Usually does.
So yeah, it uses the classic Florida man stereotype to create this totally over-the-top image. But that image, patrolling on gators, it kind of resonates with current political tensions around immigration, border security, especially since Florida has been central to some controversial policies there.
Ah, so a subtle jab at real-world issues.
Could be read that way, yeah. And beyond that, it definitely highlights the ongoing discussion about AI's role in what we see online. We keep hearing about AI bias, AI generating weird or inaccurate stuff.
True.
So this meme, whether the creator meant it or not, shows how AI content can either reinforce stereotypes or kind of mock them. It adds another layer to how we navigate information or maybe misinformation online.
Wow, okay. That was quite the journey through the X platform buzz. A real deep dive. We went from AI beating doctors at diagnosis to a father's incredible rescue jump, Olga Korbut defying gravity, and even presidential perfumes.
Yeah, it really shows the sheer variety of things grabbing our attention today, doesn't it? How tech is changing healthcare, how world events become cultural touchstones, that constant dance between politics and personality.
It really does.
It's a powerful reminder of how fast things move and how surprisingly connected all these different threads can be.
Absolutely. And maybe for you, our listener, here's something to chew on after we wrap up. As AI gets smarter, more integrated into things like medicine, challenging what humans do, and as social media keeps shaping culture and politics, How do you think our basic ideas of expertise and even truth are going to change in the years ahead?
That's a big one.
Definitely something to mull over. A question for the road as we navigate this evolving digital world.